A big warm welcome to Rick Scale Model Fix and part 2 of our Italeri 1/48 scale Hawk T1 video build. So at the end of part 1 we had the major fuselage assemblies done and we set about correcting some of the fit issues that we found with the kit. So we'd worked on getting the lower wing piece joined to the fuselage, and you joined me at a point where we've just started to clean up the wing root and the intake interface. So on the port side we've now got all that blended in, and that's waiting a coat of primer just to see what the results are like. So we're just going to work on the starboard side. So if you remember back in part 1 we added some Mr. Surfacer to the wing root and those sink marks on the wingtips, on the upper surface of the wing, sorry. So we're just going to set about removing that and making the seams good. So we're using some IPA and we're just going to work this up and down the wing root until it starts dissolving that Mr. Surfacer, like so. Just working it into the joint, and what this does is dissolves the Mr. Surfacer but leaves the plastic intact, and because the gap is lower than the surrounding plastic, it does a very good job at filling that void without resorting to sanding in an area where you remove detail and have to replace it. It doesn't take long. Once you get the Mr. Surfacer dissolving, the job's pretty quick and the results are quite good. So we just work on this section now. And then we're just getting towards the leading edge, just to remove Mr. Surfacer. It helps to have a piece of kitchen roll. I use wet wipes just to get in there to remove some of the residue as you're working, just so you can get a true idea of how you're progressing. And that's not looking too bad. We've still got a little bit of a issue there, so we'll just let's clean that up, and then we just need to work into this leading edge in the area down the side of the intake. Just want to do it so you can actually see what we're doing. The area again. And we're not looking too bad. So the next job is we had some sink marks in the upper surface of the wing which correlated to the position of the landing gear location slots in the roof. So we're just going to, we added some Mr. Surfacer there and we made it form little droplets. That's gone off now, and we're just going to sand these flush. So just gently sanding the surface of that Mr. Surfacer down. Doesn't take long, and we just want it to sit flush with the surface, with the plastic, and hence hide the sink marks. Like so. So I can't feel any trace of those. So we're going to use a Flory Models green weathering polishing stick, and we're just going to repair the surrounding plastic by giving those a polish. turn it over to the white side, and I'll bring that plastic back up. So obviously again, we won't be able to tell the exact nature of the finish until we've got some primer on the model, but as you can see, it has covered those sink marks quite nicely. I don't know if you can pick out the filler on the wing upper surface there. So the next one, we're going to have to work on this leading edge, and for this we filled it with Tamiya filler, and we're now going to work this with a Flory Models dual sanding sponge in the medium grade, and we're just going to use the sponge to form the contour of the leading edge, and just very gently we're just going to reduce the filler until we restore the profile on the leading edge. And again, just wiping the area clean. Checking our progress. So there's still quite a bit of work to do on that one. Checking progress once more, and we're getting there now. We've still got a bit of a gap there. I might not have got enough filler in the initial stage there, so we'll see how we go. We can always add more. So we're not really pressing down on the sanding sponge, we're letting the coarse nature of the surface do the work without pushing down, as will just cause loads of scratches, tear the primer, tear the filler out rather than sand it away. Quick fingernail test. Can't really feel much there now, so we'll just carry on a little bit more just to get the filler smoothed out and the contours of that blend between the wing root, the leading edge, and the lower surface of the intake and fuselage. I think we're there now, so we'll just clean that area away, and that certainly looks good enough. We do have a little bit of a gap still. I think I've got a bit of a step in the wing root, not really much I'm going to be able to do about that. So while we're at it, we can remove the tape from when we join the wings together, and we can just work this leading edge seam again with that sanding sponge. Just to eradicate the seam altogether. Don't forget, we're painting the hot gloss black, and black is even worse than natural metal at showing any of your poor remedial clean-up work. So the overall gloss black finish will be as good as the preparation that you put in. So you're not saving yourself any time by skipping preparation stages. You may as well do it now, because when you get the primer on there, you're just going to have to go back and do it. So we're always working to just getting that first layer of mist coat or primer on, and that just gives us an idea of what the surface is going to look like before we carry on, if needed, with any work. So if you remember, the last area that we applied filler to was this ventral air brake bay. The fit wasn't brilliant, it wasn't bad. So again, using the Mr. Surfacer trick and the IPA, we're just going to rub away until we leave the material in the gap and remove it from the higher surrounding plastic. Good thing with this is there's raised rivets all round this area, so using this technique we're not risking removing any of those rivets and having to try and replace raised rivets. The back end of the hawk is festooned with the things. So we'll just keep working away. We're getting there now. We've just got this side to do, so just working methodically, not rushing, just taking my time, trying to get the best surface we can before we put anything over it. Just working on the rear area now. Because there was a bit of a void between there and the fuselage. Just check your work. And like I said, just methodically work your way around in small areas at a time until you're happy with the results. I think we can safely say we're getting that. Looks good. So on this leading edge we had panel line coming in along the underside that we now need to reinstate. So just using an RB Productions scriber, just going to run it along what is remaining of the panel line. There's certainly enough there still for it to track against. We're done. And then we've just got this lower part of the intake which we'll just get in there and sand. And I think we can safely say that we're now ready to move on to applying our first coat of primer. So join me when I've been in the spray bay and we'll have a look at the results of the work so far. So we're at the spray bay and there wasn't too much corrective work to be done once we'd seam checked. So there was a little bit of work to do on this intake. Still a bit of a gap in that wing root, but I think we're going to have to leave that. Bit of work there on the nose, so it was time to start progressing. So this is where the Italeri kit starts to fall short. So referring back to the instruction book, part 31A is a blanking plate that's at the rear of the tail. Now Italeri have chosen to depict a red arrows rendition of this part of the kit, as you can see there. So it should look like this. So I don't think I made it clear in stage 3 when I was assembling the wing sections that I omitted parts 15 and 16B. This is because the Italeri parts need modifying. So as you can see from this section of the instruction booklet, they run the full length of the flap recess. So these need to be modified to look like this. So with the flap glued in place, you can see that it's a more realistic representation of that area. Also, something to watch out for are these parts being labelled incorrectly, and they don't match the holes. So as you can see, I've removed part 15, and if we refer to our instruction book, that's the inboard side of the port wing, and as you can see, the holes don't line up. But they do fit in the position at the outboard side of the wing perfectly, and as you can see from the made up side, that's the position that they should occupy. So again, just something to watch out for. Another area that's a little bit vague are the addition of the wing fences. So these should sit just to the sort of inboard side of the 4th vortex generator, as you can see from this photo. So it should look something like this. So with those corrections carried out, we added the air scoops to the top of the fuselage, and then we added the rudder, and then we started to add the navigation lights to the leading edge of the wing, the fits pour. So these were simply glued in place and polished smooth into the plastic in the surrounding areas. So we're quickly looking to get this cleaned up now. There was a little bit of Mr. Surfacer knocking about just to hide some of the gaps, as you can see on the underwing pylons. So they'll tidy those up, and we'll get another coat of primer on before we start looking at getting the gloss black laid down. So we fresh out the spray bay again, and the Hawk is now ready for its gloss black paintwork. So we've just sprayed in those flaps and the wing fences and all the other little bits that we added prior to painting. So for the gloss black, we're going to use Tamiya X1, and we're going to thin that with Mr. Colour levelling thinner. So we've got our gloss black in my Badger 150 colour cup, and we're just going to start building up this gloss black surface. So we're just going to put down a sort of light coat first, and then we're just going to start building this up gently over time, otherwise we're going to get runs. And once we've got a base layer, we can start going a bit closer and a bit heavier with the paint, just until we start getting a wet look. And you'll see that gloss building up like so. So with the gloss black now finished and our hawk is all in that monotone gloss black, it's time to start looking at masking up and painting this camouflage spine. So we're fresh out the spray booth and we've painted the upper surface spine of our hawk with those green and brown RAF camouflage colours. So they're still quite soft, so we'll leave that now to one side to dry thoroughly. So that will conclude part 2 of our hawk build. So please join me in part 3 where we'll look at trying to finish off the airframe and the model, get it on its undercarriage and add the canopy, etc. So until then, everyone, please stay safe, stay well and take care.